In today's video, I am going to talk again about creating your own applique design. So this is part 2 of a, so far, 2-part series. Hi, I'm Jamieson-Hirst of Chatterbox Quilts. Now, in a previous video, I showed you how you could create your own applique shape or design. And in today's video, I want to show you how you can finish that off. So if you haven't seen the first video, check up above or in the description below, and I'll put a link to that video. So I have jumped ahead a little bit. This is what we created in part 1, this little teacup applique. And I wanted to put it on a wall hang. So you can do whatever you want with these applique designs. I'm making a small wall hanging. So I have already created my quilt sandwich. I did this using the pillowcase method. So if you're not sure about what that's all about, check up above, check in the description below for a video on how to do that. It avoids having to do the dreaded binding. All right, so when I have put my sandwich together, I also added tabs to it, and I also managed to do this very close to the edge stitching, which closed my opening that I had. When you use the pillowcase method, you have an opening because you put things together kind of the wrong way and you turn them out to the right way. Check that video again. And so I have this all done now, and then the next thing I did is I actually stitched in the ditch. Okay, because I have 2 different fabrics here. I've got the little border going on here. I stitched in the ditch so everything's nice and stable in the center. All right, so I'll just show you. You probably can't see much on the back, but you can see some of the stitching here because I used a lighter stitching. And here's where I did that edge stitching. I think that's where my opening was, maybe over there. Hard to tell, which is the way you want it, right? Okay, so what do I need to do next? Well, here comes the fun part. I need to take my applique, and as a reminder, there's fusible web on the back of this. So I want to put this onto my sandwich, or my background in this case, right? Now, I have lots of options on how I can do this, right? I could do it like this. I could, put it down a corner and maybe do something with free motion quilting or quilting design when I quilt it. But I'm going to go very old school and traditional. I'm going to try and center it. Okay, I am going to center it. Okay, so a lot of times when I'm working with projects like this, I will just eyeball where I'm placing my applique pieces, okay? If it looks okay to me, it probably will look okay to other people too, right? But if you really want to be precise, I like to take a ruler and I'll line it up against a seam line or the edge of my project, whatever. In this case, I'm lining it against the seam line between the background fabric and the border, and I'm looking to see how far are we over, okay? So if I'm looking at the saucer, about 2 inches there. Am I about 2 inches here? About a little bit more. But again, the eye is not going to see that, right? And I'll do the same thing at the bottom here. Let's go this way. Rulers and I aren't always friends. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3 and a bit there. I bet I'll be a little bit short here, So I could pull this down a little bit if I wanted to. Again, pretty close just by eyeballing it, right? So if it looks good, it's probably good enough. And then I can fuse it, okay? This is the moment of truth. I've taken the backing off the fusible web, and I can now fuse it down, okay? It doesn't take that much to do it. You just check the edges to make sure they're stuck down and not flapping away there, because we are going to do some stitching to keep this down, okay? When I do this raw edge applique and this type of technique, it's kind of fun to give it a kind of a primitive look, just a kind of fun, whimsical kind of look. And so I like to use black thread. I know, shocking, right? Black thread, and I will just go just inside the different pieces here. So I'm free motion quilting. I can go over this several times if I want to. Sometimes I will do that. And then, it doesn't really matter if your stitches are all the same length or not. So that's the next step here, is to actually go and do this. I'm going to use black thread at the top, as I mentioned. I'm using a glide polyester. And I also am going to use black in the bobbin. Now, my fabric here is a green. You're not going to see it too much, but I find if I match the top and bottom threads, you don't see those little pokies. You don't have those bobbin threads. If they pop up, you don't notice them, right? It's the same thread color. So let's go to the machine. Let's get this stitched down so it's going to be permanently affixed. I'll show you how to do that next. Now, before we get started, I just want to give you some of the tips how I work through this type of a project when I am finishing off those edges. So as I mentioned, I'm just going to be stitching inside the applique shapes, but I typically tend to do, that sounds not so clear, doesn't it? What I like to do is I like to finish the edges of the pieces that are in the back, okay? So I work from the back towards the front, much like I do when I'm assembling the pieces. So for example, if I'm looking in this area here, this is at the very back, right? This dark blue, that part of the saucer. So I'm going to do those both first. Then I've got the cup. Now, I may or may not do that. Yeah, I probably will do that. So I'll do the cup here, and then I'll do the front part of the saucer, okay? And by doing that, for example, when I'm doing the cup, I'll just come down here. I'm not going to actually do this part of the cup at all, okay? Because it's underneath, it's tucked underneath that applique piece. So when I come down here, or I'll probably start here, but I'll be starting right there, okay? And then when I come along and do this afterwards, excuse me, I make sure it catches anything. You know, if there was any part of this that I hadn't quite finished, if my stitch was up a little bit further or something, this will make sure it catches that bottom part of the applique to keep it in place. I hope that makes sense, but typically finish your pieces that are at the back first and move your way towards the front seems to work the best. I am free motion quilting here, so let's see how it goes. I will probably go over these pieces 3 times if I remember each one. If not, you probably won't know the difference, but I will go over them more than once because I just think it works better. So as I mentioned, I'm going from the back, so I'm going to do this part next. I'll do the cup here, I'll do the saucer, I'll move up, you know, and I would do this because it's behind the saucer, right? And then do that one. This is kind of in front and behind. So I'd probably do this, come down there, and then do the little handle, okay? So I'm going to keep going here. I'm going to keep doing my stitching here, and then when that's done, I'll show you what it looks like. So I've got this part stitched down, like I mentioned. Let me show you how I did that. On another cup, of course. All right, so let's take a look at the center one. That's a good one to take a look at. So let me come back here again for a second, and we would do the handle first and then the cup, right? Because the handle is behind this piece and that piece. So let's work on that one. Okay, now I'm going to go back up that again. Turn it so you can see it. And go back up here, okay? I could go across at the bottom here to continue to the inside of the handle, but I think that would look kind of strange. I don't want that black line going across, right? Because you definitely see the black lines. So let's go back up again. All right, and let's just cut some of this off here so I don't end up stitching that down. There we go. And we're going to go down again one more time. All right, so I'm going to lock off my stitches here. And then we need to do the inside of the handle. By the way, if you're doing this and you're finding it hard, like on this particular piece of fabric here, some of the fabric, the colors in the fabric are close to the background. It's hard for me to see where the edge of that applique is sometimes. You could certainly draw lines on there to guide you. Don't be afraid of drawing lines, even when you're free motion quilting, to guide you. Gotta say, these little guys sticking up like antennas are distracting. There we go. Okay, let's go back again. And so here, you can just see here, I think you can see that there's a gap here. Okay, when I came back, there's a gap in my stitching. So if I have that happen, what I like to do is to go try and go in between the lines of stitching, sort of fill it in. It's not nearly as obvious then. So let's see how I do here. That worked out pretty well. Of course, then the next thing would be to do the mug, right? And it's going to come all the way up here and go down here. And then I've got, you know, another mug and a handle to do as well. So I'll do those, and then I'll come back and show you what the applique looks like when I've stitched it all down. Now, before I reveal how the applique looks now that I've stitched it all down, I want to say a big thank you and a shout out to my Patchwork Pals. Those are quilters who are my Patchwork Pals YouTube channel membership, and for a small monthly fee, they support my channel, which allows me to provide free content for you. If you would like to support the Chatterbox Quilts YouTube channel, you can do so by clicking on the join button underneath any of my videos. You'll get all the details. You could even become a Patchwork Pal today. Now, here's the back. Okay, so you can actually see the cups. And actually, this is a good way to check and make sure you haven't forgotten to stitch down anything, okay? If there was a gap here, I see everybody has a handle. Okay, there's a saucer. Everything looks good, right? So we're going to flip it over, and this is what it looks like when I stitch it all down. So it kind of gives it this whimsical kind of look. It almost looks a bit, it sounds weird, but a bit 3D to me. Okay, and there's a little bit of puffiness going on in here too, because we've tacked this down with 3 lines of stitching back and forth. Okay, so it actually makes the interior puff a little bit. And there's small enough parts that you really don't need to worry about quilting in there. But there is more quilting to be done, right? I still need to quilt this. I need to do something in the borders as well. So I guess this is going to be a 3-part series. So if you don't know how I designed these teacups, don't worry, I got you covered. Check out this video that has all the information that you need. And for more helpful quilting information, be sure to go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.